Hello and welcome to Point of View. I'm Tania Nugent. Thanks for joining us today. I'd like to also welcome my fellow panellist, Ms. Philma Kelegai. Philly, thanks for coming along as usual today. And our special guest is Barbara Thomas, an environmental science graduate who took up the position of Executive Director of The Voice Incorporated about a year ago. The Voice is a dynamic youth development organisation that runs programs with students at high schools and universities around Papua New Guinea, including a movement called the Clean Generation. Welcome, Barbara. Thanks for joining us on Point of View today.
Thank you, Tania, for having me on the show.
We'll talk a little bit more about The Voice and what the Clean Generation is all about a little later on in the program. But while we're talking about the next generation, I just thought it might be a good opportunity to take a look at the differences between the different generations. So society has given different labels to generations. You know, we have the traditionalist or the silent generation, which are people born in 1945 and before then, so before the Second World War. So grandparents or great-grandparents of many of our viewers. The baby boomers were born in 1946 to 1964. And in my case, that's my parents, but because probably some of your grandparents. Generation X is born 1965 to 1976. The millennials, or Gen Y, 1977 to 1995. And iGen, or Generation Z, born 1996 and later. So what are the differences between these generations, and why do we have these kind of labels? What do you think, Barbara?
It's interesting. Sometimes when I'm asked to describe the differences in the generations, I like to reflect on my family. Like in just a short space of time, like my grandfather, he never had an opportunity to have an education. He was in, the jungles of Madang, and he met a white man for the first time, and traveled up into the highlands, got married to a local woman, but then his children were able to have access to education. But then they had to walk a fair distance. I remember my dad telling me that he had to walk a week to his high school and then sleep with the villagers nearby just to attend high school. And then myself, I had the opportunity to be driven to school, which is cool, and fly on an airplane to go to university. And then I have a little brother who's 10 now.
Yeah.
And he has a computer, and he has access to, even though I don't approve some sort of social media, and he has a small tablet. And the differences of the contrast in just that, I think that period of time shows the differences in how much progress has happened as well, not just, in PNG. My grandfather.
Yeah. Seeing the first European or white person for the first time.
Seeing the first European and having to climb over the mountain. And then my father having access to a school that was set up by those Catholic missionaries in the highlands, and then having to walk to school, and me traveling to school in a car and having that access and opportunity. And then my little brother, who has a lot of access and opportunity and knows a lot and so much more than me, and he follows the rugby as well too, and he knows and he keeps up to date with all the NRL players. I think that's amazing for someone like that. So like the difference, and I think a lot of people say PNG is very slow in progressing, but just in contrasting that, we've come a long way in just a short period of time.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I would not describe us as being slow in any way, we've literally just gone on this rocket, projection into change. What you just described then is incredible, and I think that certainly we might be a little bit behind in certain areas of development, but in terms of the literal change in the life from generation to generation, I don't think there's anywhere else in the world that's happened so fast.
It's the fastest growing economy, in this region. And in terms of our people, you're absolutely right. The transition from my grandparents to my parents to my little sister, who is in Australia at university, she doesn't accessibility to everything. She knows what's up when I don't even know. I'm picking up the newspaper, reading, and she's like, "Oh yeah, this happened. I'm like, "Where did you see that? I saw it online already." It's like, day. But it's exciting. I think it's exciting growth and new things that people are learning and doing. So
yeah. Well, we are going to talk a little bit more about the younger generations after the break. We've got the Gen Ys and the Gen Zs, which is pretty much the age, the generation that the Voice Inc. works with. Yeah. So we'll be back just after the break to talk a bit more with our special guest Barbara Thomas about the Voice Inc. Stay with us. Welcome back to Point of View. Well, our country has one of the youngest populations of any country on earth. And our guest today is Barbara Thomas, who is the Executive Director of the Voice Inc., which is an organisation that focuses on the development of our youth. So tell us how you became involved with the Voice Inc. and why it interested you.
Okay. So I think the Voice started in 2007 at the University of Papua New Guinea. I myself joined in 2008 as a student volunteer. So I had graduated from a small high school in Goroka, and you know when you're thrust into like a big city like Port Moresby, it's a really big new experience, and you tend to get lost sometimes in all the new experiences around you. And I thought that it was very important to find a space where I could be able to grow and develop as a person, you know, and more importantly, awaken to understanding my purpose, you know, and try to see ways in which I could start developing my talent and my ability. Well, I didn't think about it at that point as that, but I felt that it was really important to root myself in an environment such as that. But when I went to uni, I couldn't find a space like that on campus, because a lot of the times the spaces that you had on campus were ethnic groupings, you know. That was one of the, you know, and spaces outside of that as well too. And being a female as well too, it's quite intimidating, I guess, to find a place where, you know, you're heard and you can express yourself and you can pursue, you know, things that you're interested in or be among like-minded people. So when I saw what the Voice stood for and what they tried to create, and their aim was to create sort of an enabling environment for everyone, regardless of your background, your social status, or where you came from, that it was an open space for you to come and talk about, you know, what it is that you're passionate about. And a lot of times we see a lot of negativity around us, and a lot of times media portrays a lot of the negative stories, you know, and sometimes as a young person you may feel depressed and disempowered and disillusioned about your role in seeing how you can contribute to changing that narrative, or that narrative that is put to you. And so I guess for me, joining the Voice was an environment outside of the norm, being around people who not only talked about the challenges, but talked about what we could do and how you could start using your voice. And a lot of people say, what is the Voice all about? Is it like the singing group? Or not really. It's about how, you know, connecting to what it is about you that's amazing, and using that to impact make a difference in the lives of people around you. And that's what I found in the Voice. And I've been committed ever since. I've been a volunteer. And after I graduated in 2010, I went and worked a bit, and then I realized I'd like to come back and work and also help to build more spaces for young people and in areas outside of Port Moresby, and make it more accessible for young people to come and find their voice and see how they can become leaders in creating the future today. Because that's what we believe, you know, young people being proactive, understanding that they're powerful, and using their voice to start defining or redefining the present situation, and start creating that future that we want to see today.
Yeah.
Wow, that's absolutely amazing, gosh. So the organization itself is now based in, as you said, how many different places, and how many members do you have? So
we are based out at the University of Goroka, the University of Technology in Lae, and up at the University of Papua New Guinea. Yeah. So we run what we call Centers for Leadership, So essentially providing spaces for young people to come together. And that's something that we've identified. You know, youth, the demographic of youth, it's like a really big, we have a really big youth population, a very young population. Around 60% of our population is under the age of, 35. But then the opportunities to engage youth and involve them in the process of development or empowering them to feel like they're going to add value or meaning to the growth and journey of this country. There's very limited opportunities, and that's a challenge for this nation, to create those platforms, those spaces to engage our young people. I don't want to share about our challenges. We have a lot of challenges in this space as well too, and we work with young people in high schools and universities because we believe they have a vehicle to create the change, and that is their education. But also saying that there are a lot of young people who don't have the opportunity to go to school as well too, who don't have the opportunity to have an access to or even go to university. 26,000 grade 12s each year, only 4,000 spaces, And then you compare that with the number of young people who start school every year, year one, and the number of percentage that actually finish school. And sometimes it's a bit, disheartening because you have a lot of young people who are not engaged or who do not have the opportunity. And so that is a really big gap, but I know a lot of organizations are working towards that. But we feel that, a lot of priority should be put into the youth sector because they are the future. And when you empower this group, you empower the nation as well too. I guess our work works with the young people in the universities and the high schools because we believe that the change that we want to see is systemic change, cultural change in the values. A lot of time when people think about PNG, they think about corruption, they think about the stuff that is just in depth in the system, but how do you change those things? I think you change it by talking about values, and values then lead to attitude and cultural change. So hence the reason why we work with young people in school, so that when they're in the place or position where they can influence, that they're principled people, they're people of value, they understand their responsibility to not only to live by those principles, but to be able to be responsible for their nation and start thinking as a collective and not individual and where you're from and thinking along those tribal lines, but thinking as, I'm Papua New Guinean,
Yes.
And regardless of our differences, we are here to advance together. So if we can start that conversation where young people start to see themselves as Papua New Guinean and say, yes, I am Papua New Guinean, and this is the Papua New Guinea I see, and these are the values that will bring this nation forward. And, once you have maybe a critical mass of people thinking and feeling that way, then definitely we might start to rewrite the stereotypes or the current narrative that we have.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Yes, I'm a big believer in that, creating that critical mass, the tipping point thing. I 100% believe that that's the way forward, and it's with the younger generation.
I think in order to move forward, we have to appreciate what it is about us that is Papua New Guinean, understand our context today and be able to articulate how we can go forward. And I guess that comes back to our development paradigm as well too, and coming back to our 5 national goals and directive principles as well. And in there it talks about equality and participation, it talks about the PNG way, it talks about understanding the environment and respecting it, it talks about sovereignty, it talks about everyone being involved in that process, and that forms the heart of our constitution, and that forms the heart of our values and how we would want PNG to progress. And so I guess it's just speaking to that 5 national goals and directive principles and saying, okay, in going forward also understanding that, we should uphold those certain values.
Yeah. We need to take a very quick break. We will keep going with all of this. Is fascinating. The Voice is all about developing good future leaders. And when we return, we will hear what Generation Z has to say about leadership when Isabel Drummer brings us Street View. Stay with us. Welcome back to Point of View. Well, it's pretty hard to ignore that there is a national election taking place at the moment, as the country is sizing up candidates to choose as our next lot of leaders for the next 5 years. But what does the younger generation have to say about leadership? Here's Isabel Druma with Street View.
Times and perceptions have definitely changed throughout the years, and the generation today is not as what it was before. We went to 2 different schools to ask them what they think about leadership. Take a look. What do you think makes a good leader?
Someone who's trusted by a lot of people and is honest with his words.
You guys agree?
Yeah.
Okay.
Basically, what I think makes a good leader is a person that has leadership qualities such as trustworthiness, honesty to their people, and yeah, so forth.
Well, in my opinion, a good leader is, well, anyone can be a leader. Well, anyone with some form of education or with a sweet tongue can just go up and become a leader. Well, I think there's a significant difference between politicians and leaders. Well, it's basically about knowing what your people need and giving them what they need, not necessarily about what they want. It's about having a vision and like pushing through with it despite the different obstacles that come through the way, because you know what's best for your people.
People who do not put views or opinions or like things that are connected to the people's needs or like the community itself or the country. They do not put it first but put something else as their first priority. That does not make them a good leader.
I think what makes a good leader is someone with values, someone who actually has a vision, so someone actually like gives back to the people.
Do you think a politician will make a good leader?
Yeah, I think basically that's what the people think. That's why they vote them into parliament.
What do you think makes a bad leader?
Someone who's never honest with his words.
I guess, you guys feel?
Yeah, someone's like really corrupt, probably.
And do you think historically we as a nation have been good at choosing good leaders?
I don't think anyone really knows has a perfect choice with our leaders. I mean, anyone can just be easily persuaded by what anyone can say. So yeah, I think we've had some good leaders. I mean, we gained independence pretty early for our country in this region, so that's a pretty good thing. But of course, every person has a flaw, and we've had flaws with our choices. And of course, we'd have to pay for those consequences. But I don't necessarily think that we've done really, really bad choices. There've just been some problems along the way.
Most of all, I think we chose good leaders. But the leaders, when they go into the parliament, they used to use the office to serve their own interests and forget about the interests of the people who chose them.
Prosperity for both levels of people, from the higher and from the lower, plus a greater more wealth, especially in terms of work salary.
Do you think your generation will be more likely to accept women as leaders in our government?
Yes, we will.
Yes, I definitely think so.
Why is that?
Seeing that now we are more open-minded. Like in the past, our parents and ancestors and stuff like that, they had this mindset that women were not equal to men. That's why they did not vote them into parliament and stuff. But as for our generation, I think we would vote women into parliament.
Well, yes, I mean, it's the 21st century. It's not back in the ancient days where women weren't really up. We have a lot of women doing jobs that men used to do, and we have a lot of women rising up. So yeah, I feel there'll be a lot of acceptance and changes.
And what do you want out of the next government?
Proper leadership, probably, giving back to the people, better policies.
But what would be really nice is for there to be more integrity, more honesty, because the biggest crime I think anyone can do is knowing the right thing and not doing it. So it'd be really good to see more integrity with our leaders.
Well, it really is very exciting what the younger generation's thoughts and feelings around leadership. I'm really, really optimistic about this particular generation. One of the flagship events conducted by The Voice Inc. is the Nation Builder Conference, where young people gather to discuss and make recommendations for the kind of future they want to build. And we'll hear more about that after the break. Welcome back to Point of View. We're talking about the next generation, known as Generation Z or iGen. And with us today is Executive Director of The Voice Inc., Barbara Thomas. Barbara, one of the flagship events that The Voice puts on is the Nation Builder Conference. Tell us a little bit about what that conference sets out to achieve.
Okay. So the Nation Builder Conference is our main conference that brings together the young people in the third level of the leadership development program that we run at the university. So we have a 3-year leadership program that we run through our Centers for Leadership at our partner university. The first level is the Dream. That's all about personal leadership. So we believe that you have to be a leader of yourself first before you want to think about leading a group of people. So that talks about values, principles, having a sense of personal direction. Second is active citizenship, understanding you and your role in the community and how you're influencing, or what type of influence that you're having in the community. And the third level is Nation Builder. And so at this level, we talk about how your personal vision fits into the overall vision of this country and how you see yourself contributing to that. And we tie in our themes with Vision 2050, this nation's vision, to be a safe, fair, happy, healthy society by the year 2050, and to be hopefully in the top 50 of the development index that UNDP uses to measure. So we ask our young people how they see themselves contributing to ensuring that PNG actually achieves Vision 2050. And what they think is the important pathways that this nation needs to commit to in order to achieve or see that vision realized. And one theme that we're really passionate about at The Voice and our young people, I think this generation is passionate about, is sustainable development, because we see the impacts of climate change. We see, we're starting to see the impacts of the poverty, and the things that drive poverty in our communities. A lot of our young people are growing in situations or environment that they do not have access to, the basics. But then you see the contradicting ideas about what defines a healthy economy and what defines development, and what then is development? Is it the big buildings and the roads, or is it access to the basic services? And what then does that mean? Is it more mines, or is it the opportunity for people to have equal opportunity to pursue their dreams? So asking young people that question, what is development to you and how do you define it, and what do you think will it take to ensure that your future is secured? And a lot of young people are more conscious about that now, and conscious about our footprint, and they're seeing the impacts of climate change in this country. They're seeing the impacts of a lot of things, like the refugee crisis that's happening right now. They're seeing the impacts of how economies that are driven by things that are not sustainable, and what it's happening to the people. And so the Nation Builder Conference brings together these young people to talk about what will it take to build that future. And how do you see yourself in making that future become a reality?
Yeah, it was really interesting to see some of the recommendations that came out. And I particularly liked the fourth recommendation, because the key areas were in the last Nation Builder Conference was health and education, transparency and accountability, and then environmentally friendly kind of development. And the other one was strengthening our culture and national identity. I found that really interesting to recommend that, I don't know, do we study our history in our schools, our Papua New Guinean history? If not, why not?
No, there's a really big gap. A lot of young people now growing up in the urban areas who do not have an appreciation of, culture and, the values attached to those cultural, what makes us Papua New Guinean. A lot of young people especially do not know that we study about European history, we study about Americans' history in our school system. We don't study about the people who built this nation. And we know a lot about, say, Michael Thumare, he's amazing, but also the people around him, not a lot of people know about the Bully Beef Club, or not a lot of people know why the Highlands Highway is called the Okuk Highway, or not a lot of people know, you know, some of the very senior statesmen and women who helped to build this nation, and their stories need to be told so that they can also learn from their values. I think, like, you go to places like America, and the stories of their people and the founding fathers are there, and it's everywhere, and it's part of their culture. And so if Papua New Guinea wants to, like today, in the sea of information and all the influence from the West that is starting to drown our nation, if we are to at least try to stand tall and say we're uniquely Papua New Guinean, then we should start celebrating what is uniquely Papua New Guinean. Our story is very important, you know, stories that capture our journey as well too. Even our story is not 400 years old or started when the missionaries came to PNG. It's thousands of years old, you know. We have, you know, history we should be proud of. We were some of the first agriculturists, the seafarers, you know, and I guess some of the first innovators, people who, you know, did stuff that was amazing. And if people could appreciate how far or how strong and how resilient our people were, and appreciate and celebrate that, I think that would be amazing, because a lot of the recorded history starts when the Europeans came to our country. But we're more than that. We're thousands of years of civilization to one of the most ancient lands. So I think it's important to also celebrate that. And a lot of young people, I mean, in school you don't get to celebrate that, you or learn that, a lot of that. So at The Voice we started a project as well too, and some of the law students at UPNG, they did a mini constitution project to simplify the constitution.
Oh, fantastic.
And also talk about how it was written up, because the process was also interesting, how they went to all the communities to get their ideas on around the 5 national goals and directive principles, and how they pulled it together. And that itself as well too is empowering for them, because they, wow, it actually is a collective view of what our people thought, you know, should be our values, and celebrate that.
So beautiful. Yeah. We've got to take a very quick break again now. We'll be back with more shortly on Point of View. Stay with us. Welcome back to Point of View. So now it's time to test your knowledge. We're going to do a little quiz that will maybe kind of highlight some of the peculiarities and differences of the different generations. So this is the Point of View Generation Quiz. Okay, question number 1. Gen Z is best described as A, the most diverse generation, B, the largest generation by population, C, the most antisocial generation, D, the less dependent on technology generation. This is Gen Z. Which one is it? A, B, C, or D?
I think it's C, because my sister's always on their phone. They never look at me. They're very antisocial.
The most antisocial. Which one do you think?
I don't know. A.
Yeah.
A, the most diverse.
Yeah, they are the most diverse. They're more open to the concepts and notions of diversity, which is really cool, because you know, there's all, especially in a place like PNG, which is diversity capital of the world.
That's right.
That's very promising that generation is very open to views on diversity. Okay, so Generation Z, social network of choice. Is it A, Facebook, B, Twitter, C, Snapchat, or D, Instagram?
That's a hard one.
What are the Gen Zs?
There's none, 2 of the above. Facebook.
Facebook?
Instagram.
Instagram? It's actually Snapchat.
Oh.
Because what this generation values their privacy more. They're not, you know, and Snapchat is an app that, you know, it's eventually erased quite quickly. So that appeals more to Gen Z. Yeah, so it's interesting that they value their privacy more. Whereas, you know, maybe the generation before is the selfie generation, the millennials. So the Gen Zs are like, you know, and I noticed that. I've got 2 children. One's a Gen Z and one's a millennial. And I agree with that. The younger one is very private, very private. So, okay, Gen Z spends approximately how many hours per week on their smartphones? Is it A5, B10, C15, or D20? on their smartphones.
D20.
E all their time.
All their time. It's actually C, 15. Well, it's 15.4 hours a week. Millennials spend a little bit less. So yeah, the Gen Zs are certainly engaging in that space. Okay, Gen Z is less visual than the generation before. True or false?
I think that's false.
False.
Yeah, definitely false. Emojis.
Emojis.
You know, video. They prefer to, like all of that stuff.
Pictures,
that's how they pictures. It's it's never
memes.
Words. Memes. All of that. Okay. So, which of the following notable people is a millennial? Which is born in 1981, between 81 and 97 or thereabouts. Salma Hayek, Mark Zuckerberg, Miley Cyrus, or Barry Bonds? Which one is a millennial?
Mark Zuckerberg.
This is Zelma Hayek?
It is Mark Zuckerberg.
Oh.
They're millennials. So the others are, Miley's, I think, a Generation Z, and the others are
before that.
Generation X.
X.
Yeah. Mark Zuckerberg, CEO and co-founder of Facebook, was born in 1984. Oh my goodness, that makes me feel so old. Seriously. Seriously. Okay, this is really interesting. Which generation is considered to be digital natives as opposed to digital migrants? So when we're talking digital, we're talking about technology, information technology, just the whole digital online era. So which generation are digital natives rather than digital immigrants? Is it A, the boomers, B, Generation X, C, millennials, or D, Generation Z?
Be the latest generation, wouldn't it?
D, Gen Z.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they are the ones, basically, unlike previous generations, Gen Z were born into it. So we can all remember, well, I can anyway, when there was no internet, where there wasn't even a mobile phone. We used to have beepers that would pay, when we were on the road and go, there's been a car crash, get the camera over there. We'd go to the payphone and call the chief of staff and get whereas Gen Z were born into this technology. It's just really, really interesting. I think it's really important to note because this rhetoric keeps coming up saying, social media doesn't mean anything, it's nothing, it's nothing. It's not really a true reflection of PNG, but I think that is going to change like that, and I think we need to take it very seriously.
Definitely.
The younger generation are going to outnumber us.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay, another question. Gen Xers are known as the me generation. Is this true or false? Generation X.
Which one's X?
Generation X is my generation.
Me generation?
Like the one before you, your Y.
They false.
I think that's false.
Yeah.
Yes, it's false. It's actually the baby boomers who were my parents, your grandparents, who were dubbed the self-absorbed me generation.
Really?
And my generation have been tagged as the slackers. Very slack.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
So,
Interesting.
but then again, these are surveys done on societies, not our society in PNG. But I think it's really interesting to discuss because, it's really important to know, to close that gap between the generations and to understand where we've come from. Okay, so after pay, which groups say work-life balance is the most important characteristic for their best job? So work-life balance is important to boomers and Generation Xers, millennials and Generation Xers, or boomers and millennials?
Boomers and millennials?
Boomers and millennials?
Yeah, I would think so as well, boomers and millennials.
It's actually millennials and Gen Xers. Well, I certainly agree with that as a Gen Xer. That definitely the work-life balance and the satisfaction I get from work is more important than how much I get paid. And for boomers, the most important thing is if the job has a health plan. But that's because they're all oldies.
Cute.
I know. Cute. I know. Okay, and here's another one. This is the last question. Amongst these age groups, which one has less credit card debt than the previous generation?
Oh, not mine.
Is it boomers, Gen Xers or millennials? Which one has the least credit card debt than boomers, Gen X or millennials?
I think it's millennials.
Gen X.
It is millennials. So good one, kids. Nice one. Yeah, that... this is again an American. These are an American figures, but the percentage of Americans under 35 who hold credit cards has fallen to the lowest level since 1989. So they're a bit more financially, I guess, just different, responsible, or however you want to describe it. So that, ladies and gentlemen, is the Point of View Generation Quiz.
Excellent.
Thank you very much for participating. Hope you've heard some interesting information. We are going to take a very, very quick break, and when we return, we're going to hear from the youngest of our young generation. That's right after the break on Point of View. Welcome back to Point of View. Well, we've heard quite a bit today about what the next generation is all about, and we thought that before we wrapped up the program we would give some space to the youngest end of Generation Z, and probably what the next generation after that, we don't know what they're going to call it, but here's what the little kids have to say.
What do you think of Prime Minister? You campaign?
Campaigns.
Alright, that's what a Prime Minister does, eh? What would you do if you were Prime Minister?
Build new schools.
Hey, what would you do if you were Prime Minister?
Make the world a better place. I will be really happy. I will make plenty of schools for the non-schoolers.
Stop gun violence. I would stop violence against the people of Papua New Guinea. I would help a lot of people who are struggling, and also have a lot of schools and have a lot of hospitals and a lot of universities.
What does the Prime Minister do?
Look after the country.
Prime Minister helps the schools, help community, and those other things.
And what would be the first law you would put down as Prime Minister?
No, my first law is, I'll say, no drinking and driving. No fighting in the country and stealing.
Who is the Prime Minister right now?
Pawas Paco.
Peter O'Neill.
Yeah, the Peter O'Neill. Pawas Paco. Peter O'Neill.
Who's the Prime Minister?
Pawas Paco. Prime Minister Pawas Paco.
Oh, that's so cute. Kids, man, no filter. They just say
whatever they want to say.
And that brings us to the end of Point of View. But before we go, I'd like to invite you both to have your final two toys worth. Philma.
Yes. Thank you so much, Barbara, for coming on. We really enjoyed that. I learned quite a bit. It's quite interesting to see what's happening, the large population, and how the voice is doing great things in terms of harnessing that energy and that power, and good on you, and congratulations, and keep it up. And I'm really, really interested and quite amazed at the culture that we have, the large history, and how we as a people can move forward knowing that where we've come from is greatness, and we have that in us, and it's in our potential, and we can only expect greater things. So I'm excited. Thank you so much.
And you have a final word that you would like to say?
Thank you for having me on the show. It's been amazing. It's also been really great reflecting also. Not a lot of times we have the opportunity to reflect on the generations and the differences, but also the stories that we can get from each other and how we can learn, and also the importance of bridging those generational gaps as well too, and connecting as well too. And I think that's so important, having that connectivity and everyone being included as well too. And as young people, sometimes we forget about the importance of connecting to our past as well too, and bridging those gaps as well too. So yeah, it's been a really good reflection for me. Learning a bit more about my generation and sharing a bit on my reflections about the previous generations.
Yeah. Well, I just want to say that I'm super, super, super optimistic and excited about the Generation Z of Papua New Guinea. I think that you know, they've been able to observe, you know, we've made a lot of mistakes as we've grown as a nation, and our leaders have, and I really think that this generation is the one that's going to turn it around. I want to, like you mentioned before, encourage the younger generation to get back and touch base with our traditional practices, but not just, you know, yes, we still have bride price, but what does it mean? Go back to the actual values and the virtues of those traditional practices. And also go to some of our traditional practices that, quite frankly, are wrong, that don't work, like sorcery, like polygamy, like violence, and throw them out. You know, we don't have to hold on to everything just because it's our culture. And we have to, but if we are holding on to things that are our culture, we need to actually know exactly the proper meaning and objective of it. It's not just to show off how much money you can pay for a woman. There's in bride price and stuff like that. Anyway, but anyway, Jen said, you got my vote. I'm very optimistic, and I think the country's in good hands. So thank you both for coming on the show, and thank you also to our viewers for tuning in again today, and we'll see you all again next time on Point of View. Bye for now.